Okay, it's Robin Harford from eatweeds.co.uk, and I'm sitting here in my garden with Miles Irving, who is the author of the Forager Handbook. Miles, so tell me about wild food. Why do you think foraging on wild food is so important? What's the difference? Why can't people just go into a veg shop and eat from the veg shop?
I suppose it's just in terms of the quality of the relationship between yourself and every other part of the process that results in you having food on your plate. And if you're eating wild food, you've got to get to know your surroundings. You've got to get to know a little bit more about the living things that co-inhabit the place that you live. And yeah, it's just a bit more about being connected and switched on to the other things around you and the place where you live. And I mean, that's one way of looking at it, from a positive point of view. And then if you look at it the other way around, what happens in the food chain with stuff that you buy, there's obviously all sorts of issues there that you're managing to sidestep and avoid, like food miles and you know, the use of agricultural chemicals and so on to produce those vegetables. And also, let's face it, just how fresh it is. I mean, how fresher can it be that you go out and pick something and either eat it on the spot or take it home and eat it later that day? It's about as good as it gets from that point of view. And then I suppose the other thing is just nutrition. We find that those plants that have been analysed for nutrition, on the whole, the wild ones seem to have just far more nutrients in them than anything you're going to buy in the shop. So yeah, I guess that's quite a bundle of reasons. You're getting involved, aren't you? That's the thing. I mean, I suppose that's the strongest word that I would say about it, really, in terms of the experience of gathering wild food, is that you are involved. You know, you're involved in the place. You're involved with the life cycles of these other species. And I think the problem with virtually everything that's negative about our modern way of life is the uninvolvement, the kind of the putting of barriers, the putting of mediation of one kind or another between you and another thing or another person, you know. So
yeah, mediation is a good word. It's sort of, we become spectators, haven't we? Yeah. So do you see foraging as quite an empowering process?
I think it's profoundly empowering and life enhancing, really. Well, I suppose that, you know, I've kind of banged on in the book a little bit about the fact that we're still hunter-gatherers. You know, that's one of my kind of favourite trains of thought about this, because, you know, our genetics and our biology haven't changed. You know, just because we've been sowing wheat and you know, herding domestic cattle for 10,000 years, it hasn't altered our makeup. You know, so I think there's something about it. Not that we can all go back to a traditional hunter-gatherer society, of course we can't, but to make moves back in that direction is in keeping with who we are, I think, you know, and in keeping with what our bodies are made to do, both in terms of nutrition, what you end up feeding yourself as a result, but also the kind of stuff you spend your day doing, like just being aware, keeping your eye on the growth cycles of plants and noticing things about your landscape and things like that. That's what our psychology is made up to do, you know, amongst other things, obviously, but it is very fundamental, because most life hinges on the ability to obtain resources. And of course, we obtained all of our resources by finding and using things for however long we were here before we found, possibly 190,000 years. We are certainly not fulfilling the capacity that we have to be tuned into our environment, and I think that's something that makes you more alive, you know, to actually be sensitive and responsive to what's going on around you. And the fact that for most people, most of the time, what's going on around you has been predominantly biological, you know, other species, you know. Whereas now, living in cities and living in houses where there's not living things, you know, if you don't go out all day and you haven't got your house full of houseplants, do you know what I mean? Whereas before, people would have been all the time out there, hearing the sound of the wind through the trees, smelling things, touching, you know, all of that. I think that's doing something to our sort of psychological well-being, that we don't have that. That is the main characteristic I can think of people that that get into wild food and foraging is that they, I mean, I think they're already people that care about their surroundings, but the more you do this, the more sensitive you get, I think, and the more, well, involved. If you're involved with something, you care about it, you look after it and all that sort of thing.
So stewardship.
Stewardship, exactly, yeah. And yeah, I think it does change the way. I mean, it's changed me profoundly just in the last few years. I've been doing it professiononly. You'd think it would be the, you know, as soon as something becomes about money, it becomes mercenary and hard-headed and all that sort of thing. But I just haven't found that. It's stepped up my involvement. That's the thing. So because I'm more involved, I'm more aware, and it is, in spite of the fact it's obviously I'm receiving hard cash for what I do, but it's still absolutely breathtaking just to go to this place that you haven't been for a year, because it's, you know, it's a bit of a journey, and you go there when you know something's in season. You just go back to this place and you just feel a part of it, because last year and the year before and the year before that, it's these kind of rhythms and cycles and things which people obviously would have felt, even agriculturalists would have felt it, but there's something a bit more breathtaking about the rhythm and cycle that you actually have no control over, but that you're just tapping into and participating in.
Let's move on to your book, the Forager Handbook. How do you see it in the kind of the library of wild food books that have gone before?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just brought it up to date a little bit, but it's also it's time for something a bit more thorough, something a bit more comprehensive and in depth, really. I mean, I feel, you know, what Richard Mabey's book did was, because he's such a gifted writer, you know, I think he just captured people's imagination and just inspired people with the idea that you could, because, you know, there's loads of wild food books around at that time. It wasn't like he thought of this great new subject to write about. Loads of books on wild food came out, but his is one that stuck just because it is so inspirational. But at the same time, it's not that comprehensive in its scope, nor is Roger Phillips one. I mean, Roger Phillips obviously is a photographer first and foremost, and there's great pictures that just, these gorgeous things, the dishes in the context, you know, yeah. It's lovely. Yeah. And also he dug up some great historical stuff. I suppose the strongest thing that we've got in my book is the contemporary use. Yeah. And the fact that you do get told something helpful about all of the plants, you know, and that, you know, that partly came from people that were giving us feedback while the book was being written, because they said, look, that's the thing that excites me so much, the idea that we can actually go out and find something and be able to reproduce a restaurant recipe, instead of thinking, oh, you know, this is exciting that we've got this, but we don't really know what to do with it, you know, and that confidence that you have knowing that this is a recipe that worked, yeah, that people bought and then bought again, and I think it just elevates the sort of status of it from this kind of desperate measure, you know, yeah, that you take because you're skint, or you got lost in the woods or something like that, or you're just trying to prove that you could if you did get lost in the woods, or yeah, all that stuff. So I think it's great for people to have something that they could do with all of the plants, and then we've just expanded the range really of things, because
it's not just wild edible plants, is it? It's also includes cultivated flowers like daylilies and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, but strictly speaking, they are all wild in the sense that they must be naturalised. I mean, if it doesn't occur in the British Atlas, the Atlas of the British Flora, then it's not in the book. Okay. So even if it's in there as a naturalised garden escape, if the Botanical Society are recording it as a wild plant, then I class it, yeah, as a wild plant. Yeah. One of the things I find most exciting about wild food, apart from all this glorious kind of back in touch with the land stuff, which obviously, you know, I do feel that as, you know, very, very valuable and important, but I also just love the idea of a neglected resource being put to use, you know. So that's why I definitely don't feel purist about, say, a daylily or anything else that's jumped over the fence, and you know, because I think, well, there it is, let's use it.
Yeah, it's shouting at you. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Miles.